that time from like depression and anxiety, so I thought moving to a new city would help cure all, like, yeah, no baby, I was not doing it the right way. There's power in the tongue. It says that in the Bible, okay? The enemy don't want me to share the good news. Child. I visited Charlotte, so no one knew but my therapist. I never visited Charlotte. I still haven't taken my state boards exam for school. And I barely had any money saved to move out. So when all odds were stacked against me, kind of, sort of, it was just like, yeah, what the heck are you doing? Type of thing, like on the outside looking in. And so I was just like, yeah, I don't know. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl itstorrijayy, and if you've seen by the title today, I will be giving you guys a story time. I feel like it's a story time slash life update, honestly, but is there everyone's questions, and I guess the biggest question of all is, why am I in Charlotte, North Carolina? Like, I think that's like the biggest question, and I feel like I've lied to some people and was honest with other people, and it's honestly because I don't know how some people will be receptive of it. But I think like today I just like kind of want to share it because I feel like I have so much of the good news like stored up inside of me that I really have to like turn on the camera and like share it. Basically, make sure you like, comment, subscribe to my channel, follow me on all social media platforms as itstorrijayy with 2 Y's on Instagram and Tori the Stylist on TikTok. And let's just get into this video. Usually I'll have a script basically kind of outlining what I'm gonna say, where I'm gonna go, do. But today I'm gonna just knock it off the dome and editing Tori, if you want to add something, just jump in and add it, you know, while you're editing if I forgot anything. But for right now, I'm just gonna just spit off the dome, okay? Okay, so I think the number one thing is, the first question is, what made me want to move out my parents' house in general? Like, what made me want to move, or have I ever wanted to move in general? For those who may know, a lot of people may not know, I've always wanted to move out of state, like always. Like since like college, I wanted to go to college out of state, but you know that wasn't the plans God had for me. But I've always wanted to live out of state. Like that's always been my thing. And it's not because I come from a terrible household. My parents were loving, caring. They trust me. If I could have stayed at home, I would have. Okay, I mean, the door is always open for me, or whatever. I'm not saying my parents kicked me out or anything, but if I wanted to stay at home, I really could have stayed at home, honestly. Even my parents said, they was like, I was never a bother. They barely knew I was there sometimes. I never disrespected their household or anything like that. So it was just like, they was just like, you know, if you wanted to stay here, you could, you know, type of thing. But it's like, it's okay if you want to move out too. So I've always wanted to move out of state. For those, like I said, for those who may know, some may know, some may not know, I wanted to live in Houston, Texas first. What proposed Houston? Honestly, I feel like I was just talking out my butt. Really, because I was like, oh, I want to move out of state, I'm just go to Houston, because I knew I didn't want to go to Atlanta. One, because I don't like doing what everybody else do. That's number one. But then number two, because Atlanta wasn't for me. Atlanta is lit, don't get me wrong. I feel like Atlanta is a perfect place to vacation, but as far as like going there to live, like personally for me, I'm not the Atlanta girl. I feel like that's the black LA, and I've never even been to LA, so I was just like, nah, that's not my vibe. And I visited Atlanta like a couple of times, so it was cool. Vibe was chill. Like, I like Atlanta, but it's just not my cup of tea to live there. I wouldn't do that. It's the scripture, when you tell God your plans, he like, that man chuckles, okay? Bust out laughing into tears, period. But sorry y'all. So yeah, basically, so like I was telling God like, yeah, I'm moving to Houston, basically trying to dictate to God like, yeah, make a move, make a way, because that's where I'm going, type of move. And I'm just like, and God's basically like, no. In the process, I was trying to force it. Like, I was really trying to force the move. So I was trying to find scriptures to support my move. I was trying to find signs to support my move. I was telling God to tell me, like, that's where I need to go, and he was just like, no. So, and he just kept telling me no, 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 no. And so I was just like, no, like, that's where I'm going. I'm about to say something which is gonna like help in the future, but one of the parts that's like why I'm glad I didn't move there at the time that I wanted to move to Houston, because my heart was not in the right place. And what I mean by that is, like, when you make decisions, I think it's very important to check your heart posture to see, like, where is your heart at the end of the day when you making these decisions. And then that's not only talking about moving, but like anything in life, especially spiritually, when God, when you feel like God's calling you to something, or God is calling you to something, you gotta check your heart at the end of the day. And God's not gonna open doors for you if your heart is like wicked. If it's like malicious intent and if it's wicked, God's not gonna put his name on that. Like, absolutely not. And then that, with that being said, me moving to Houston, my heart posture was not in the right place, and I was moving for all the wrong reasons. I feel like I was trying to run away from my problems. I feel like I was trying to run away from things in general. I felt like I was suffering really bad at that time from like depression and anxiety, so I thought moving to a new city would help cure all, like, yeah, no baby, I was not doing it the right way. So yeah, so over the time, like, God was telling me, like, yeah, no, Houston's not the place. And then y'all heard that saying that everything's bigger in Texas? Yeah, that's including the bugs. Absolutely not. So I was like, oh, that was like my final straw when they told me that, like, yeah, that was my final straw. Yeah, no, Texas is not for me. And then I went to Texas for my he wasn't my boyfriend at the time, but for my boyfriend's birthday. And when I went down there, it just wasn't my cup of tea, and it wasn't my vibe either. So I was like, yeah, this is cool to be down here, but I wouldn't live down here. And I was talking to one of my closest friends one day, before I even moved here to Charlotte, and I was telling her, like, I felt like because I visited Houston and I don't like it, like, I think I'm one of rare people that don't like Houston. Like, it's not my cup of tea. I prefer Atlanta over Houston, but because I went down to Houston and I did not like it, if I would have moved and interrupted my whole entire life and went to Houston, that would have really destroyed me as a person and my mental health. So when God closes one door or rejects you or anything like that, God's protecting you, and at that moment God was protecting me. All right, so then the next part, or the next question that people were saying, what was asking is, how do you know God told you to move to Charlotte? Okay, so it was January, we in 2024, it was January of 2023. Sitting in my bed scrolling on TikTok. Actually, before I get to that part, I always knew my time in Maryland was coming to an end, right? Like, I have reached the ceiling when it comes to living in Maryland. I just personally didn't know where to go. So I thought, like, okay, because I tried. After God told me no to Houston, I was like, okay, maybe it's meant for me to stay here in Maryland. But I was like, I really tried. Like, I was like, okay, let me see, let me give Maryland a try. And it was like, no. Like, it was just no. It was like a big fat no. And it was just like, okay, well, God, where do you want me to go? So I was like, oh, maybe he's saying like Virginia. I knew it wasn't no DC. I'm not a DC girly. I don't claim DC. I claim DMV, not DC at all. So I'm not a false claimer. Absolutely not. But yes, I thought it was like, oh, just DC. And I thought it was Virginia. My fault. I thought it was Virginia, and God was like, no. So I was like, okay, so I'm asking God, okay, God, where do you want me to go? This was before 2023 came. So I'm in 2022 asking God, okay, where do you want me to go? Like, you're not telling me anything. So with that being said, January of 2023, that's when God, or was it February 2023? Well, January 2023 actually started off in shambles. I can tell you that much. I got in a slight car accident. I was broke. I had to also break the lease when it came to my salon suite. I also had to I also took a step back from doing hair. That's another thing too. Yeah, I was depressed out of my mind. I was grieving the year anniversary of my grandmother. January literally was whooping my ass. I'm gonna be 100% honest. So actually it was like, I feel like it was February, but it was February 2023. God showed me Charlotte, North Carolina. I was on TikTok scrolling my bed at night, and God showed me Charlotte, North Carolina. And so then at the time, what I thought was anxiety was actually excitement. But I thought like my body experienced the symptoms of anxiety, but later on in life I realized it was all excitement. My spirit was excited. So I was kind of confused because I was like, whoa, why do I have this feeling? Like, I see people move to Atlanta, I see people move to Houston, Dallas, freaking LA, and I don't have this. So what's the thing when it comes to Charlotte? So my main concern was not doing Charlotte how I did Houston, which is falling into my own understanding, doing things my own entire way, and not including God. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pray. I prayed about it that night and I let it go. I ain't talk about Charlotte no more. I ain't talk about North Carolina no more. It was a conversation between me and God, and I let it go. So that was February 2023. As time went on, God didn't say nothing else about Charlotte at all. Let me say that. So for about like 3 months, I didn't hear nothing about Charlotte, and I didn't bring it up. So if God didn't bring it to my attention, I didn't bring it up either. So that's how I was rocking with it. Okay, so that was that. And yeah, so then that's when I would say of June of 2023, June 1st 2023, right on time, 12 o'clock, I was sleeping, and I heard the audible voice of God. And what he said to me was scripture, Proverbs 3:5, which is trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not rely on your own understanding. So some people, when I tell some people that, some people always ask me, how do you know it was God's voice? First of all, you need to know when something's God's voice and when it's not God's voice. Y'all need to know what God's voice sounds like. God's voice is a very soft whisper. Like, that man don't yell. Okay? It's a very soft whisper, and that's exactly what that was. It was a soft whisper. It's like that man came and said, y'all, like, no cap in my rap over here. That was June 1st. So something in me told me I need to remember that scripture. So I took it and I was like, okay, I wrote it. I was like, this is important. Like, something in my spirit was just like, this is an important scripture that I need to know. And so I took it and I remembered it, and I was like, I'm gonna take the scripture and I'm gonna remember it. So then as time went on, God was on time. Like, right, every time with that scripture, he was right on time, never late, and he told me in so many different ways. So the first of every month, or at least the first week of every month, God always revised the scripture to me. Proverbs 3:5, Proverbs 3:5, Proverbs 3:5, Proverbs 3:5, Proverbs 3:5, Proverbs 3:5, Proverbs 3:5. We kept reiterating that scripture, and I took notes like every time he told it to me. Hey y'all, editing Tori here. I look mad freaking crazy, and that's ridiculous. But I just wanted to come in and just give y'all like reference, because when I said like he really told me the scripture every month at the top of the moment, I mean it. So of course June, he spoke it to me with an audible voice. July, it was a scripture of the day in the Bible app. August, I saw it on a lady's t-shirt during a service, and then also the guest pastor also said it during service as well. September, I heard it in the sermon, and it was on the Bible app. It was in the Bible plan on the Bible app that I was doing. October, it was the Bible app, and I was adding a prayer to my list from January 3rd. November, it was a TikTok video that was labeled "It's Already Worked Out." December, Pastor Jenkins' service about backsliding 12:3. He read the scripture, and then back to January of 2024. Bible scripture of the day 1:3, but that's when they were sending out old scriptures, but God was like, nah, I want you to see that scripture. So we don't believe in coincidences over here, but I just had to reiterate and show y'all, like,
I really have it all like it's labeled Proverbs 3:5, and like these are the notes. Like God was really trying to get that scripture in my head since June of last year. So just wanted to let y'all know.
With that being said, we're gonna go back to Houston. When I was trying to force the issue with Houston, the thing that I was watching this one video, which I'm also linking in the description box below, everything that has been told to me. When I was trying to force Houston to be the city that God was calling me to when he really wasn't. When I was trying to force Houston to be the one that God wanted me to do, I remember the video that I watched this girl saying that God called her to move to Dallas. And what she said was, you'll know God's calling you to something or calling you to move, and not necessarily physically move, like move from one state to another, but just move from one part of your life to another part of your life. He'll attach a scripture to it. So I was like, okay. So I was like, wait a minute. So I was like, well, this has been the scripture that, like, it was like, it just a little light bulb went on my head. So I was like, oh my gosh, so God has attached this scripture to my life, so like, well, to this journey. So I was like, like, okay, Proverbs 3:5, that's the scripture that he's been showing to me. And I am a firm believer that sometimes our thoughts can come into reality, and we do manifest things into our reality. And I'm not saying it because I know somebody's gonna take my words and read and flip-flop it, twist it. What I'm saying is, sometimes we can speak things and say things into our reality, and that's how things sometimes can happen. There's power in the tongue. It says that in the Bible. Okay, so that's why I don't read a lot of them tarot card readings and all the other. I don't do stuff like that or anything that's, first of all, that's witchcraft, but that's another topic for another day. But I don't do that type of stuff because the enemy don't want me to share the good news. Cha. Yeah, I don't like to force things to happen on my own. I'm not that type of person. I pray about everything before I do anything. So I did not want to make it seem like I was searching for the scripture. Like, oh, God gonna tell me the scripture, Proverbs 3:5, so I'm gonna try to look for it everywhere I look. No, that's not what I did. I literally lived my life like just a normal life. And that's why I said, like, sometimes God will always be on time and come on the first, but then sometimes God will come just the first week, or sometimes God will come the second week. But at the end of the day, before that month ended, God was gonna tell me Proverbs 3:5. That was the scripture he was gonna tell me. Whether he said it or not, that was the scripture he was gonna tell me. Okay, so I've heard the scripture I was telling me the whole entire time during this whole process of moving to Charlotte. So that's just something I wanted to say. So yeah, so Proverbs 3:5 was scripture he would always say to me, and he said it first audibly on June 1st, and since then all the way down to my move today, well, until my move, which was in February, he told me, he kept reiterating the scripture, Proverbs 3:5. So if God is calling you to go anywhere, moving from one part of your life to another part of your life, make sure there is a scripture. It's only going to be a scripture. It may be multiple scriptures, but it's going to be a scripture tied to your life. So if no scripture is tied to what you're trying to do, baby, that's not God. That's not God. So I just had to say that. After that was, I guess, to propose the question of, the same question I even asked God was, why Charlotte? Because it was just like, okay. Because I asked God for multiple confirmations, and that man was on time. Like, I asked for the weirdest confirmations. I'm like, if this is like, God, if this is for real, it's like, send me a sign of, I asked God, like, if Charlotte is the place that you want me to do, want me to go, God, like, the first one was like, make a way, like, pave a way for me, because God is he's gonna give you everything that you need, and he's gonna pave the way for you. So it's just like, all right, God, like, pave the way for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, if this is where you want to go, just pave the way. Because if it's from God, it's not gonna be as hard as some people may think it's supposed to be. So I was like, you know, God, just paved the way. That was the first confirmation. Second confirmation I asked, I was like, okay, the way is being paved. I said, the wave is being paved, okay? So I was like, okay, the next confirmation I asked God was like, okay, if it's a sign, a guy, if you're calling me to move to Charlotte, I'm gonna hear the word hornet or hornets or whatever, because I play basketball and that was their mascot for Charlotte basketball NBA team was the Charlotte Hornets. So I was like, okay, it will be the Hornets or whatever. And so Later that night, I was on Instagram and I saw a video, and this lady was like shaking the back of her dress, like at a wedding. She was shaking it, and then they was like, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And she was like, "It's so horny in my dress," and I just bust out into tears, y'all. Like bust out into tears. I think this was about like August of 2023. I bust into tears. I said, "Oh my gosh," because I was like, "Oh my gosh." So I was like, "Oh my gosh, bruh." So I was like, so yeah, so I was like, "Oh my gosh," like I was so pressed. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, I just bust out into tears because like, I don't know about anybody else, but when I see the miracles of God happen like in like real time, like in like within my eyes, like I see it like for real. I mean, the biggest miracle is like waking up and seeing a new day. That's the biggest blessing of it all. But like when you just hear God just respond to your prayers like that, it's like, oh, woo, like it was just such a big blessing or whatever. A lot of other side things are coming to my head now when now that I think about this whole process, but like I'm just saying the most important, big, impactful things for right now. I'll come back to everything else in a second. And I think either that night or later in the week, I just asked God, I was like, "You know what, God? Okay, you're telling me Charlotte is the place that I need to be. Okay, but why Charlotte? Like, I just want to know why you're calling me to Charlotte." So God pointed me to, I think 3 different stories in the Bible.
All right, y'all. So I said it was 3 scriptures in the Bible, but I didn't quote them right. So I'm going to tell you guys here the 3 scriptures in the Bible. So, hey, editing Tori again. So it was 3. And I have my journal like right here. Like these are all my notes. And I wrote this August 15th of 2023. So y'all don't think I'm capping. So yeah, it was Genesis 12, Genesis 12, that whole chapter. Exodus 3 verses 7 through 10, and Exodus 14 verses 11 to 12. So these are the notes that I took. This is not the scriptures. You can go read scriptures on your own. But for Genesis 12, the notes that I took was that God promised Abraham a great nation. Abraham failed the test of faith when he lied to the Pharaoh about Sarah being his sister rather than his wife, because he had no supplies. Like when God was moving Abraham from one point of his life to another point in his life, he had to give up his riches, and he didn't have no riches. And he knew when he went to this country, the only way that he could get any type of profit is by basically telling them that his wife was his sister, so they can like do a trade off. But from the notes, it was like, don't fear, nor worry. God will supply you with all your needs. Sometimes the test is to trust in the Lord and all he has planned for you, and do not focus on what's lacking in front of you. Focus on what God has planned for you. That was the notes from Genesis 12. Exodus 3, chapter 3, verses 7 through 10 was about Moses in the burning bush. And we may be the blessing to someone else's cry. And I was listening to a podcast and a sermon about Moses in the burning bush, but I will find it. I'll link it in the description box. But the other notes I wrote was, God may be calling you to lead people out of distress, and then you may be the blessing someone else needs. So that story is Exodus 3. So Moses didn't actually go and free the Israelites until Exodus 14, which I'm about to get to. So it's like almost 11 chapters later. So Exodus 14, 11 through 12 is when Moses actually went to go free the Israelites. The way that God called, and this is in the notes I took too, the way God calls us to be saved from our distress won't be in the way we understand. Fear of change, unfamiliarity, or the unknown will cause more damage to the path God has planned for you. Trust in what you can't see or understand. Don't go backwards because of what you cannot see ahead. And in verse 14 particularly was, God will put you where you need to be. Some things are only possible because of the power of God. Be still and trust God. So these are all my notes. But the last one, verse 14, was specifically for verse 14. So I'm gonna link the scriptures. Like I said, I'm gonna link everything in the description box, but y'all could go and read these scriptures on your own for your own understanding and take your own notes from it. I did write a actual journal entry, but I don't feel comfortable sharing it. But yeah, so this is Yeah.
Yeah, so those are the 3 stories. And if you're not familiar, like I said, I don't have the scriptures right now because they're in my old journal, but those are the scriptures that God has pointed me to. So and those are the scriptures that was tied to me on top of Proverbs 3:5. Yeah, so after I found out that's what it was, at that point in my life, I was like, okay, we're going to Charlotte. God's calling me to Charlotte. Okay, now we just got prepared away. And at that point, I have not taken my state board exam. I had no money saved up. Well, I did have some money, but not really. I barely had money saved up. My birthday was around the corner. And at that time, I was not in a relationship, which a lot of those other questions, like I said, did come to my mind because I was just like, God, if you're calling me to go to these certain places, maybe my husband or my boyfriend or whoever guys was putting in my life, maybe they're in North Carolina. No, baby, he wasn't. My boyfriend is still in Maryland, which is another story for another day if I care to share. But yeah, that was just something I had to share. But everything that I thought, like any question I proposed, God had an answer to. And so, or like he'll chuckle and laugh at because it was just like, why are you worried and concerned about that, like type of thing. But that's all I had to say. But yeah, so at that time in my life when I was like, okay, well, God's calling me to Charlotte, this is the confirmation, this is where we're going, I have still not told a soul. I think the only person I knew was my therapist. I have not told a soul at all. At that point, I never visited Charlotte, so no one knew but my therapist. I never visited Charlotte. I still haven't taken my state board exam for school. And I barely had any money saved to move out. So when all odds were stacked against me, kind of sort of, it was just like, yeah, what the heck are you doing, type of thing, like on the outside looking in. And so I was just like, yeah, I don't know. But like as time went on, October was the best month of my life. Out of the whole year, October was just amazing. And if those who don't know, October is my birthday month. I was born October 22nd. You know, I'm not supposed to be so big in zodiacs, but sometimes I am. Yeah, October was my biggest month. So not only did I fail my state board exam, but I also passed at the same time. Meaning I failed my first time, but I passed my second time. In October, I took them hoes back to back. I was wasting no time. Okay, so I passed my state board exam. I became a licensed cosmetologist in October. I celebrated my 25th birthday, which is a milestone birthday. I started talking to this guy who soon later down the line becomes my boyfriend, and eventually finds out is most likely probably the person God has put in my life for a reason to be my husband, but we don't know yet. And then yeah, opportunities just started to happen. Like God revealed to me who my friends were, who were the real people in my life, who loved me, who cared about me. I finally visited Charlotte. Charlotte was like, that was when I visited Charlotte for the first time, and it was like, oh my gosh, I love it here. I was like, oh my gosh, I love it here. And I was like, it was like October was that month, and I was like, yeah. I was like, I had got my flowers and I could still smell them, and I was like really grateful for that. So that was October. November, December, it was, I think at that point I was just talking to God and asking him when at that point. So I was like, okay, so we already know that we are moving to Charlotte, North Carolina. Now was the point of, okay, when are we moving to Charlotte, North Carolina? Like a lot of things have to go into place. And I think another prayer that was really holding me down too was praying to God and saying like, help prepare my parents, because I think like my friends, they'll get it. My boyfriend, I told him way before we even started talking, like, this is where I'm going. You know what I'm saying? We started talking again in October. So I started telling people, I told him and I told my friend Sasha in October, but other than that, it was just like between them two, nobody else knew but my therapist. But yeah, I told him my friend, so he been knew before we even started all of this. Because everybody always asks about me and him. I mean, that's not y'all business, but we good over here. Thank you very much. But yeah, so that was that. So I just asked God just to prepare my parents, because that was just a nice task itself, as well. So I was just like, you know, prepare my parents or things of that nature or whatever. So as time go on, November passed, December comes, God reveals to me a dream. Well, no, Yep, God reveals to me a dream of when I'm supposed to leave my current job and when I'm supposed to move. Well, when I'm supposed to leave my current job, let me say that. God showed me a dream. He showed me two. One was good, one was not good. When I was supposed to leave, and I was supposed to leave my job between December and January. The job I had back in Maryland, the last job I had back in Maryland, I was supposed to leave between December and January. I didn't leave my job until February, but when I tell you one dream was good, one dream wasn't, it was like one dream was subtle and the other dream was kind of chaotic. And for those who don't know, when God tell you to move and you don't move, you don't want God to do it for you because it's not gonna be pretty. And so like the first dream was God letting me do it. Like I gave you the instructions, now you follow instructions. The second dream was God doing it for me, and it was like, ooh, that's not pretty. So that was just another point too. Like if God tell you to move, do it. And I recently saw on social media where somebody says that y'all probably already know. I'm not really trying to include this, so I'm not gonna say the name, but I saw a staff member left a church and they told their pastor it's because God called me to do it, and he put air quotes around that and it was like, tell him the truth. That is the truth. If God is telling you to move and leave an environment, that's the truth. But yeah, so with that being said, yeah, God gave me an opportunity to do it myself. And so when I talked to my therapist about it, as far as like the win, I was honestly, I'm not gonna act fake like I was not scared this whole entire process. So in the last couple of weeks, the last month of me getting prepared to really leave and go to Charlotte, I had a lot of doubt and I had a lot of fear. And so you cannot have that when you're operating in the light of God, in the presence of God, or you better be on your P's and Q's. Let me just say that. And those P's and Q's is faith. You have to have faith and you have to trust in God. And so my therapist, but if it comes to the final moments, she said, she proposed me to Hebrews 11. Hebrews 11 I refer to as the book of faith, and that is literally what God was telling me. This last stretch, y'all know how like when you've been running, if you run track before, you know, like when you running, when you get to that last 100, it's the last, or even the last lap, it's the last stretch. You really like, it's just something in you give it your all. And that's literally what God was trying to tell me. Like, I want you to give me all your faith, everything, every little last bit that's in you, give it to me. And it's just like, that's what the book of faith was. So when I never read Hebrews 11. I don't even think I ever read the book of Hebrews before, but when I read Hebrews 11, I bust into tears. And the reason why is because it's like the book of faith. It's like a hall of fame of people who have faith, and this is what happens when they have faith. Like, it's just like all the great things that God has done into their life. If you want a track record of what God has done, the Bible is like all of it, but like Hebrews 11 is like a quicker version of it. And even then, it doesn't even show you everybody. And I feel like it's a blessing, because it also shows like, this is what happens when this person had faith. This happened. When this person had faith, this happened. Like, all you have to do is have faith, and that's all God was telling me to do. So and that's what I did. So I had faith, and I just had faith. And when I had faith, I had peace. Like, the whole moving down here was so stressful, because moving in general is stressful, but like the whole mental process of it all, I had peace. The enemy was whooping my behind, don't get me wrong, but I had peace. And the reason why I say that is because God already worked it out. Let me tell y'all something. When I got this apartment, I never toured this apartment before I got it. That's number one. Number two, I didn't know how. I didn't have a job either before I got here, or before I left. Before I put my 2 weeks in, I didn't have a job here. That's number two. And then number three, like, I was really just walking on faith. Like, I was like, yeah, God's gonna work it all out, so I'm just leave it there. And that's just how I ended up here. So with that being said, like, just have faith. So that's really the end of this story time of how why I moved to Charlotte. If you want me to kind of like do a quick overview right now of like why I did it, I moved to Charlotte because God told me to, and I obeyed. I think that's the quickest version of me really giving it to you, breaking it down. I moved to Charlotte because God told me to, and so I obeyed. And I have the scriptures to prove it. And that's just all I can say. And since I've been down here, God has been supplying me with everything that I need. As long as I keep him in the rear view. I mean, in the front view, not the rear view, in the front. As long as I keep him in the front, he will always supply me with everything I need. The moment I stir off and I stir away is the moment I lose control and I fumble. But I love it here, y'all. I love it in North Carolina. And I'm not telling you to up and leave your hometown and leave your job. That's not what I'm saying. All I'm saying is obey what God is telling you. Obedience is the biggest thing, and you gotta be obedient. And it's not only just obedience. You gotta have faith. You gotta be obedient. You gotta trust in God. You gotta make sure you hear him. You gotta cut out all distractions. You can't sit here and be like, yeah, I'm operating the way that I'm walking in my purpose. You ain't walking in your purpose, baby, because you walking blind. So where you walking to? So I just want to say that to somebody, like, no matter what you do in life, remain obedient. Make sure your heart posture is checked. Check your heart. Check your heart posture at all times. Do not do anything out of wicked intent. Do not do anything out of malicious intent. Don't do anything out of pure evil intentions. Like, just make sure you check your heart posture at the end of the day and obey God, okay? Remain obedient. So that's all I wanted to say. I know I was kind of trying to like answer a lot of people's questions, because I know everybody was like, why are you in Charlotte? What made you move to Charlotte? And I've been lying to people because I don't know how people are receptive when it comes to talking about God. I'm not the type of person that likes to throw my relationship onto people when it comes to God. But I'm gonna share the good news, okay? Period. God was not being my biggest kept secret. Absolutely not. But yeah, but I'm gonna share the good news. So with that being said, I love you guys. I will talk to you guys later.